Welcome to the Quantanix YouTube channel. This is Time Travel Podcast, Episode 9. Ever looked around and wondered why, if time travel is in humanity's future, we aren't exactly tripping over tourists from tomorrow? That's the fascinating question we're plunging into today. Time tourists and final interdictions. Why haven't they shown up? It's a real puzzle, often called the tourist paradox, and it's our mission to explore the compelling reasons behind this apparent absence and what it might tell you about time itself. Think of it as your express ticket to understanding a truly mind-bending idea.
That's right. The tourist paradox essentially asks, if future technology will allow us to journey to the past, why isn't our present day, and well, a popular destination? It echoes the famous Fermi paradox, which questions why we haven't detected extraterrestrial life in a vast universe. Similar logic, really.
Exactly. If time travel becomes commonplace, wouldn't logic suggest that at least some curious individuals from the future would be here?
Right. And what's fascinating here is the expectation, the thought that some future visitors might even share knowledge, potentially giving us a huge leap forward technologically. Their absences, well, it's a key part of this mystery.
Okay, so let's really dig into the heart of this paradox then. If backward time travel becomes a reality, wouldn't you expect to see a fair few time travelers around?
You'd think so. History enthusiasts wanting to witness key events, scientists eager to study the past directly.
Maybe even people just trying to game the system with future knowledge, right?
Absolutely. The fact that we aren't seeing these folks in obvious ways is what makes this so intriguing.
And the implications are significant. If time travel were widespread in the future, it's reasonable to assume some travelers might bring with them advancements that could revolutionize our present. Think about breakthroughs in medicine, energy,
or even fundamental science. The lack of such obvious interventions is a central part of why the tourist paradox is such a potent question. It feels like something's missing.
And it's not as if we haven't considered the possibility. It brings to mind Stephen Hawking's rather clever experiment back in 2009. Can you lay out what he did and why?
Certainly. Yeah, Hawking's party. In June 2009, Stephen Hawking hosted a party at Cambridge University specifically intended for time travelers.
A party for time travelers.
Exactly. But the crucial element, the really clever bit, was that he sent out the invitations after the party had already taken place.
Ah, okay, so the logic was.
His reasoning was quite elegant. If travel to the past were feasible, then future time travelers, upon learning of the event maybe centuries later, could simply journey back and attend.
Right, they'd see the invitation in their future and just pop back for the party. And the turnout, did he get any unexpected guests from the future?
Well, the event was remarkably quiet in terms of temporal visitors. Basically, no one from the future appeared.
Nobody showed up?
Nope. Hawking himself viewed this as rather direct experimental evidence, his words, that time travel is not possible.
Strong words. Though I suppose one empty party isn't absolute proof.
No, not definitive proof, of course not. But it certainly provides a compelling data point to consider within the tourist paradox. It adds weight to the absence.
So taking Hawking's empty party and the general lack of any clear evidence of time travelers seriously, what are some of the primary theoretical explanations for why they seem to be a no-show?
Okay, well, the most straightforward explanation, and perhaps the easiest to grasp, is that backward time travel might simply be physically impossible.
Just can't be done.
Right. Despite the theoretical loopholes suggested by, say, Einstein's general relativity, the universe may operate under fundamental constraints that prevent us from moving backward through time. It might just be a fundamental law.
So in this view, the absence of time tourists is simply a consequence of a physical law we haven't yet fully comprehended. The paradox dissolves if the basic idea is wrong.
Precisely. The key takeaway here is that the paradox is solved if the premise of future backward time travel is incorrect. Simple, in a way.
That's a direct answer, sure, but often the universe has more layers, doesn't it? What about the ideas involving multiple realities? The multiverse.
Ah, yes. The multiverse theory offers another intriguing perspective. It's a bit more complex, but imagine that each instance of time travel to the past doesn't alter our single timeline.
Okay.
But instead creates a new, separate reality. A branching point, if you like.
So every trip back makes a new universe.
Essentially, yes. In this scenario, time tourists might indeed be venturing into the past, but they would be doing so in these parallel universes, on timelines distinct from our own.
Which means?
Therefore, we would never encounter them because they would exist on a completely different branch of reality. They wouldn't be in our past, but a past that looks like ours.
So the core insight here is that time tourists might exist, but in reality is entirely inaccessible to us, solving the paradox by sidestepping our timeline altogether.
Exactly. They could be there, just not here.
So in some other universe, they might be observing the Big Bang firsthand, or chatting with dinosaurs, and we'd have absolutely no way of knowing. That's, yeah, that's a mind-bending thought.
It is.
But what about the notion of active prevention? Some kind of, I don't know, universal rule or maybe even future laws that strictly prohibit messing with the past?
This leads us nicely to the concept of final interdictions. These are essentially mechanisms, maybe natural, maybe artificial, that prevent the kind of paradox-inducing interactions that widespread time travel might create.
Okay, final interdictions, like cosmic guardrails.
Sort of, yeah. Think of these as built-in safeguards to prevent the potentially chaotic consequences of tampering with the past. One form these could take is inherent physical laws.
Like we just discussed.
Well, yes, but maybe more specific. Laws that simply prevent actions that would lead to logical contradictions, like the classic grandfather paradox.
Ugh, the grandfather paradox. Going back and accidentally preventing your own grandpa from meeting your grandma, meaning you're never born, meaning you couldn't go back. That loop of causality always ties my brain in knots.
Precisely. It highlights the potential for logical inconsistencies. So one type of interdiction could be the universe just not allowing that kind of thing.
But what about non-natural prevention? Like rules?
Right, another type of final interdiction could come from future governance. Imagine highly advanced civilizations establishing strict regulations against any interference with the past.
Like we protect historical sites or wildlife preserves today.
Exactly like that. Much like protecting a delicate ecosystem or maybe a historical monument, or even like policies about non-contact with uncontacted peoples. Our time might be seen as a preserve.
You can almost picture a do not disturb the early 21st century sign.
You could. Think of Star Trek's Temporal Prime Directive as a philosophical example. The idea that interfering with the natural development of other societies, even past ones, is fundamentally unethical.
Why would they impose that?
Well, such a framework would prioritize preventing unpredictable ripple effects, safeguarding the natural course of history, and maybe restricting dangerous information about the future from falling into the wrong, our hands, perhaps.
It's a really interesting ethical tightrope, isn't it? Do you step in to prevent a disaster you know is coming? Or do you let things unfold naturally, fearing even worse unforeseen consequences?
Absolutely. It highlights the inherent moral complexities embedded in the very idea of time travel. Even good intentions could backfire spectacularly.
So governance is one possibility. What else falls under final interdictions?
Then there are technological limitations. This is a big one. Even if the fundamental physics allowed for backward time travel.
Which is still a big if.
A huge if, yes. But even if it did, the practical challenges might be so immense as to act as a de facto interdiction, a practical barrier, not a theoretical one.
Like what kind of challenges?
The energy requirements could be astronomical, potentially needing the power of a star. Or think about the precision needed hitting a specific date and location millions or billions of years in the past without accidentally ending up inside a rock or in deep space. It might be far beyond any conceivable technology.
So temporal tourism might be theoretically possible, but practically unachievable. It's like saying we can theoretically achieve faster than light travel based on some interpretations of physics, but the energy needed or the exotic matter required is so far beyond our grasp that it's effectively impossible for now.
Exactly that kind of scenario.
Yeah.
The sheer difficulty acts as a barrier.
Okay. And you mentioned one more type.
Yes. Finally, we have the intriguing proposition of self-correcting timelines. This is a fascinating one. Some theories suggest that reality itself possesses built-in mechanisms to prevent paradoxes.
How would that work? Like the universe fights back?
Sort of. Any attempt to alter the past might trigger a series of compensatory events that ultimately steer the timeline back towards its original course, or something very close to it. It smooths out the disruptions.
So even if you did stop your grandfather meeting your grandmother,
maybe they meet later under different circumstances, or maybe your other set of grandparents somehow ensure your lineage continues. The end result remains consistent. In this view, time travelers might not be able to make significant changes because, in a way, their actions were always destined to be part of that history, leading to the outcome we already know.
like a river always finding its way back to its course, no matter how you try to divert it temporarily.
That's a great analogy. History might have a similar self-regulating quality. This implies that changing history may not be possible, because time travelers were, in some sense, always part of history.
That aligns with something.
Yeah.
Isn't there a principle about that?
Novikov. Yes. The Novikov self-consistency principle suggests something very similar, that any actions taken by a time traveler were part of history all along, making paradoxes impossible, because the timeline is already consistent, including their visit.
So it's less about rewriting the past and more about fulfilling a role that was always meant to happen. That sounds, well, very fixed, very deterministic.
It does suggest a more deterministic perspective on time travel, absolutely, which naturally raises deep questions about the extent of our free will. If our actions in the past are already woven into the fabric of time, how much genuine choice do we possess when we travel back?
This makes you wonder, even if time travelers were here, bypassing all these interdictions somehow, would we even recognize them? What if they're just masters of blending in?
That's a critical point, the observational challenge. Identifying a time traveler from a potentially far more advanced future would likely be incredibly difficult.
They wouldn't exactly show up in a DeLorean flashing future tech.
Probably not. They would likely possess technologies and camouflage techniques far beyond our current understanding. They'd know our history, our customs, our language perfectly.
Could they already be here?
It's possible. Some have even speculated, though it's highly speculative, that certain unexplained phenomena, maybe including some UFO sightings, could potentially be misinterpretations of future human technology rather than extraterrestrial visitors.
So they could be all around us, just operating at a level we can't even comprehend, like incredibly sophisticated secret agents from the future observing us.
It's a possibility to consider. Or, think about this. What if temporal tourism doesn't even involve physical travel in the way we typically imagine?
What do you mean, like virtual reality history?
Something like that, perhaps much more advanced. Maybe future societies have developed methods to experience the past through incredibly detailed simulations based on historical data, or maybe through some form of quantum interaction, or even by observing alternate timelines within a multiverse framework, all without ever physically entering our present timeline.
So they could visit without leaving a footprint. A kind of virtual time travel that leaves our timeline completely untouched.
Exactly. Such methods would leave no physical trace for us to detect, neatly sidestepping the paradox.
That's a fascinating concept. It makes you think about stories like Isaac Asimov's The End of Eternity, where you had this whole society dedicated to manipulating time, but it came at a huge cost.
Indeed. Asimov's work, and of course the classic grandfather paradox, preventing one's own birth, really highlight the fundamental logical and sometimes ethical challenges of backward time travel. Is altering the past inherently contradictory?
It feels like it should be.
Well, while changing the past, like truly overwriting events, is often seen as logically problematic, maybe even incoherent. The idea of affecting the past is different.
Affecting versus changing.
Yeah, where a traveler's actions have consequences, they make ripples, but without altering the prior properties of events that already happened. Their actions become part of the sequence. It's a more subtle concept considered in some philosophical models, maybe more logically consistent.
It's a fine but crucial distinction. You're not erasing history, you're becoming a part of its already established flow, fulfilling what happened.
Precisely so. And while all of this remains largely within the realm of theoretical exploration and thought experiments, the scientific pursuit of understanding time continues.
Any recent developments?
Well, there was even a report, you might have seen it, in early 2025 about a scientist claiming to have resolved a major time travel paradox mathematically. The details are still sparse and need verification, obviously, but it suggests people are actively working on these problems.
Interesting. But still theoretical.
Still theoretical for backward travel, yes. And, of course, we should remember that we already know that time travel to the future is a real, proven phenomenon.
Right, through relativistic effects. Astronauts aging slightly slower, that kind of thing.
Exactly. High gravity, high acceleration, they cause time to pass slower for the person experiencing them relative to everyone else, confirmed by atomic clocks. But that's strictly a one-way journey into the future. It doesn't let you come back for tourism.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. To summarize, the tourist paradox, the apparent absence of visitors from the future, presents a truly compelling puzzle about time itself.
It really does.
And it suggests several potential solutions. Perhaps backward time travel is just physically impossible. End of story.
The simplest answer?
Or maybe they're all off exploring alternate realities in a vast multiverse, leaving our timeline alone.
The multiverse escape hatch.
Or perhaps there are these final interdictions in effect, whether they be natural physical laws, preventing paradoxes, strict future regulations,
The temporal prime directive idea.
technological hurdles that are just too high to overcome, or even the self-correcting nature of time itself, ensuring consistency.
Exactly, a whole range of possibilities. And the lack of time tourists, this very absence, might actually be the most significant clue we have about the true nature of time.
It challenges our fundamental assumptions about causality, free will, and the very fabric of reality we experience.
He pushes the boundaries of our understanding.
It certainly gives you plenty to ponder. So, the next time you encounter someone who seems, I don't know, unusually knowledgeable about the past or maybe hints at the future, maybe, just maybe, they've managed to navigate around those final interdictions.
A thought well worth considering, indeed. It adds a little mystery to everyday life, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the tourist paradox. This concludes our time travel series. Stay tuned for our next podcast series right here on the Quantanix YouTube channel.